Hello again, welcome back. I'm Kyle. Today I'll be reading through the book of Esther, chapter 1. So, not the whole book, just chapter 1. Before I start, I did want to talk a little bit about the book. Most people know, but you may not know, that the book of Esther doesn't mention God at all. It doesn't mention any religious topics, there's no mention of prayer. It is a historical book. It does mention some events that took place with the Jewish people. It mentions some historical figures like King Ahasuerus, that in a secular sense was known as Xerxes. And it wasn't typically known, and this was one of the things that were researched before, that these were the same. This was the same guy. So, but it was later uncovered with maybe some ruins or something. I'm not 100% sure that Ahasuerus was seen as Xerxes, and so confirmed this biblical account that this is the king that it was talking about. Esther shows a lot of coincidental evidence that a lot believe, and myself included, that this shows the providence of God. So events happening in the story that seem very unlikely to happen unless God, was behind the scenes, helping it out a little bit. It is important to note with the history of this book, there are, even some, I believe, I've heard that even some of the Jewish people didn't think that maybe Esther belonged in the Bible because it doesn't specifically mention God. However, because the events in the book are historical and they relate to the Feast of Purim, Esther is a book that connects to Jewish history, and I believe is even read during the celebration of Purim. So due to that, it stays in that collection, and probably a big reason why it's in our Bible as well. Because if you're Christian, you may not celebrate Purim, but your Bible will have Esther in it. So the coincidences or the peripeties that we can see in the Bible, and just to point out, a peripety is a sudden change of events. So the story's going one way, and it's a literary device where the story ends up shifting and almost doing like a 180 back in a different direction. So we'll see those, and we'll kind of point those out as we read. I did want to mention that I think it's believed that Mordecai, one of the characters in the book, may have written the book. There's points at the closer to the end of the story, I think, where he does write a few things, but I think it's pretty well believed that he's written the book. See if there's anything else here. So I want to say it's also believed that like the setting for Esther would be somewhere between chapters 6 and 7 of Ezra. I believe Xerxes, and I made a note, Xerxes ruled from 486 BC to 465 BC, so about 20 years. Anyway, what I want to do now is just open up God's Word and get through the first chapter of Esther today. So I'll be reading from the New King James Version, and we'll start with chapter 1. The King Dethrones Queen Vashti is the title of this chapter. So it says, "Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus." This was the Ahasuerus who reigned over 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. In those days, when King Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan, the citadel, that the third year of his reign, he made a feast for all his officials and servants. the powers of Persia and Media, the nobles, and the princes of the provinces being before him. When he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the splendor of his excellent majesty for many days, 180 days in all. So he's in that time he's showing his riches of his glorious kingdom. So it seems that he's maybe making a spectacle. Maybe there are some decorations to show that what his kingdom is doing. And this is happening for 180 days, that there's this attention on his kingdom. Verse 5 says, "And when the days were completed, the king made a feast lasting 7 days for all the people who were present in Shushan, the citadel, from great to small, in the court of the garden of the king's palace." So this would be at the end of that 180 days. Verse 6, "There were white and blue linen curtains fastened with cords of fine linen and purple and silver rods of marble pillars, and the couches were gold and silver on a mosaic pavement of alabaster, turquoise, and white and black marble." Verse 7, "And they served drinks in golden vessels, each vessel being different from the other, with royal wine in abundance, according to the generosity of the king. In accordance with the law, the drinking was not compulsory." So that means if you didn't want to drink, you didn't have to. Nobody was expecting you to. And that was according to the law. So apparently that was something that was valued in that society, that we're not gonna make people feel like they need to drink. "For so the king had ordered all of his officers of his household that they should do according to each man's pleasure." So wherever your values lay, that you were free to do that. You weren't going to be judged or made to do something you didn't want to do, as far as the drinking goes. Verse 9, "Queen Vashti also made a feast for the women in the royal palace, which belonged to King Ahasuerus. On the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, Abagtha, Zethar, and Carcass, 7 eunuchs who served in the presence of King Ahasuerus, to bring Queen Vashti before the king, wearing her royal crown, in order to show her beauty to the people and the officials, for she was beautiful to behold." And so this mentions seven men, and they were eunuchs, and they were given this order to bring Queen Vashti before the king. But Queen Vashti refused to come in the king's command, brought by his eunuchs. Therefore the king was furious, and his anger burned within him. So it doesn't give any indication as to why Vashti didn't want to come, but you could speculate. Maybe she was having a good time. Maybe she didn't want to. Maybe it was just she didn't want to come and be paraded around people. It's hard to know, but it doesn't say specifically why she didn't come. It just says she didn't. Then the king said to the wise men who understood the times. So these would be different people from the eunuchs. So he went to them, and for this was the king's manner toward all who knew the law and justice, those closest to him being Karshena, Shether, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marsina, and Memucan. These were the 7 princes of Persia and Media, who had access to the king's presence and who ranked highest in the kingdom. What shall we do to Queen Vashti according to the law? Because she did not obey the command of the king Ahasuerus, brought to her by the eunuchs. And Memucan answered before the king and the princes, Queen Vashti has not only wronged the king, but also all the princes and all the people who are in the provinces of King Ahasuerus. For the queen's behavior will become known to all women, so that they will despise their husbands in their eyes when they report King Ahasuerus commanded Queen Vashti to be brought in before him, but she did not come. This day the noble ladies of Persia and Media will say to all the king's officials that they have heard of the behavior of the queen. Thus there will be excessive contempt and wrath. If it pleases the king, let a royal decree go out to him, or go out from him, and let it be recorded in the laws of the Persians and the Medes, so that it will not be altered, that Vashti shall come no more before King Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal position to another who is better than she. So from these verses, we can see that this was most likely a patriarchal society, meaning that there would be a male lead, the king, and there was a concern about that order being upheld. So the evidence of this in that passage would be that the women of the kingdom would hear and they would despise their husbands. So it seems like the expectation would be in this society with King Ahasuerus, that the expectation was that the elder male and maybe the family unit or ruling will be making decisions, and Queen Vashti may be upsetting that order. So that's kind of where their fears are. They've made that clear, and so they believe the best course of action would be to put Vashti away. And so I don't believe that means she was killed or anything. She no longer went before the king. So and I think in this time period, that could have been something that he could have chose to do, would be to execute her maybe, but it doesn't seem, according to this story, that that's what's happening. It just says that she would not go before him anymore, or come into his presence, and that her position would be given to another. And that does sound very unfortunate for Vashti, that she made this decision, and it seems like it cost her greatly. However, when you consider the whole story, her being able to step aside from her position and allow Esther in, we'll see later in the rest of the book how that gave just a good opportunity to save a lot of people. So I like to consider that point too, that hey, this isn't just some injustice being done that doesn't seem fair. Maybe it does seem fair to some people. I like to also consider the fact that Vashti's position helped make room for someone who would inevitably help save a large number of people. Verse 21, and the reply pleased the king and the princes, and the king did according to the word of Memucan. Then he sent letters to all the king's provinces, to each province in its own script, and to every people in their own language, that each man should be master of his own house and speak in the language of his own people. So that concludes chapter 1. Tomorrow we'll do chapter 2, or hopefully tomorrow if I don't get too busy. Or I know I ended up on the phone last night, so I meant to record this last night. So anyway, whenever I get it, I'll post it, and we can get through the next chapter as soon as we can. All right, thank you. Bye.